You'd never imagine how tiny, seemingly insignificant flies are actually saving your life. It sounds almost unbelievable. How could something so small play such a huge role? But here's the curious truth. These flies, armed with a secret nuclear twist, are the silent heroes protecting millions of animals, and indirectly you from a horrifying parasite. It's a story full of surprising facts, hidden battles, and a bold strategy that flips nature's rules upside down. While most people don't even know this war is happening, its impact reaches far beyond the farms and forests you might expect. And the mystery only deepens when you discover how this invisible fight continues today, constantly evolving and demanding relentless effort. If you think this sounds like science fiction, think again. What you're about to learn could change the way you see the natural world, and the tiny warriors defending it. Imagine an enemy so small you can barely see it, yet capable of eating you alive. No exaggeration here. Cochleomia hominivirax, also known as the New World screwworm fly, seems like it crawled out of a badly written horror story, but it's very real. Unlike those annoying little kitchen flies, this one has a bizarre appetite. Living flesh. Yep, you read that right. It lays its eggs in open wounds on warm-blooded animals, or even humans. And when the larvae hatch, they don't just stay on the surface. They dig. They drill downward in a spiral, burrowing into flesh, causing pain, deep wounds, infections, and sometimes death. In just a few days, what started as a simple cut can turn into a bloody, festering hole. And here's a curious fact. Regular pesticides. Pretty much useless. It's like trying to put out a wildfire with a teacup of water. The impact was brutal, especially for livestock across the US and Latin America. Desperate farmers watched entire herds suffer. A small scratch on a cow could become a grotesque entry point for this relentless parasite. Now imagine the financial damage. Then imagine the helplessness of not being able to stop something so tiny, yet so devastating. It's one of those mysteries of the natural world that shows us how nature can be both cruel and brilliantly twisted. And here's a fact of history you don't hear often. This parasite was once considered a national-level crisis. It reshaped how science and agriculture had to respond to invisible threats. The screwworm wasn't just a pest. It was a biological nightmare. The most interesting part. Most people don't even know this insect exists. And maybe that's the scariest detail. While the world carries on unaware, this thing is out there, lurking, waiting for an opportunity. And don't think this is some old 1950s problem. Outbreaks still happen, and the threat never really went away. It's like a persistent shadow, always hanging around. But if the problem is this serious, the obvious question is, how do you fight such a small, brutal, and resilient enemy? Well, the answer didn't come from brute force or poison. It came from a brilliant, bold, and, believe it or not, nuclear idea. What if I told you that one of the most effective weapons against a deadly parasite was a radioactive fly? Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? But it really happened. Back in the 1950s, scientists made a decision that, at first glance, sounded completely insane. Use radiation to sterilize male flies. The idea was simple but brilliant. Since screwworm females mate only once in their lifetime, if they happened to mate with a sterile male, no offspring would be produced. And without offspring, no infestation. It's one of those historical facts that prove how a bold idea can change everything, especially when the enemy is too small to fight with brute force. The first real-world test took place in Curacao, a Caribbean island. Hot climate, perfect breeding ground for the fly. It was like a real-life open-air lab. And here's the curious part. Before long, the parasite population started to plummet. No need for pesticides. No need to hunt down flies manually. They just flooded the area with sterile males, week after week. Nature took care of the rest. And soon, an interesting fact became reality. The parasite was completely eradicated from the island. Just imagine the impact of this discovery. It was as if they'd uncovered a secret biological cheat code to defeat an invisible enemy. And the best part: no pollution, no toxic residue, no collateral damage. Just pure science playing chess with evolution. That success lit a spark of excitement. If it worked on an isolated island, why not on entire regions? The answer came quickly. The radiation sterilization technique soon scaled up into an industrial-level strategy. And here's a curious twist. For the first time in history, scientists managed to control an entire ecosystem, not through extermination but through intelligence. This not only saved billions in agricultural losses, but also redefined the limits of applied entomology. The screwworm fly, once an uncontrollable mystery, now had an opponent it couldn't outsmart, armed with science, ingenuity, and, believe it or not, a touch of radiation. But the victory on that little Caribbean island was only the beginning. The real challenge was about to unfold, on a continental scale. The success in Curaçao sparked a fire that quickly evolved into an international strategy. If it was possible to eliminate the screwworm fly on an island, why not across an entire continent? And that bold vision drove scientists and governments to think big. In the United States, an industrial-scale parasite combat machine was born. A colossal factory in Texas, built to produce billions, yes, billions, of sterile flies every week. Sounds wild, right? But here's one of those historical facts that prove how sometimes the best defense against a plague is to do the exact opposite of what instinct tells you. Instead of killing flies, they started mass-producing them. That's right. Millions of flies were bred with a single purpose: preventing the next generation from ever being born. With this factory running like a high-speed assembly line, the technique was deployed with surgical precision in infested regions. First, Florida was declared screwworm-free. Then Texas. Then the entire country of Mexico. It worked like a domino effect. Each clean border became a shield to protect the next. And here's a curious fact. Countries began forming an unprecedented scientific alliance. Central America, so often fragmented in public policy, came together in a united effort. Honduras, Nicaragua, Guatemala, all working in sync to wipe out the threat. It became a race against time, but also against biology. Because, as you can imagine, the screwworm's reproductive cycle is ruthless. One mistake, and everything could start over again. But the real trial came in 1988, when Africa was suddenly hit by a screwworm invasion. Total mystery. The parasite had never been recorded there before. How did it get in? Theories vary. Maybe via an infected animal shipped from the Americas. But the most impressive part wasn't the shock, it was the response. In just 4 months, millions of sterile flies were shipped straight from the American continent to North Africa. A full-on biological army, transported in crates, airplanes, and refrigerated trucks. And here's the curious part. It worked. The outbreak was stopped before it could spread. This little-known event proved that the technique wasn't just effective. It was scalable, adaptable, and, above all, fast. But as the borders kept pushing outward, a new challenge was emerging. How do you stop an enemy that's always looking for the smallest crack to sneak back in? After so many victories, you might think the enemy was defeated, right? But with the screwworm fly, that's not quite the case. It's like that movie villain who always finds a way back. Even with half the continent free of the plague, nature doesn't make it easy. That's why the United States and Mexico decided to build a wall. But not a concrete wall, a meat wall. Sounds strange. Me explain. They set up a permanent factory in Panama, the strategic point connecting South and North America. From there, 100 million sterile flies are released every week. 100 million. An invisible army flying through forests and fields to stop the real parasites from moving north. This biological wall works like an invisible defense line, monitored with almost military precision. Scientists and technicians use traps, sensors, and drones to detect any sign of the original fly trying to sneak back. And when one is found, the alarm sounds immediately. The curious thing is that almost no one notices any of this. You might be vacationing in Costa Rica, enjoying ceviche peacefully, and right nearby, a full-scale biological warfare operation is underway. An interesting fact is that despite all this effort, outbreaks still pop up from time to time. In 2016, for example, an infestation in the Florida Keys set off the alarms again. And it wasn't an isolated case. In 2023, the fly reappeared, invading parts of Panama, Costa Rica, and southern Mexico. These outbreaks show just how constant this war is and how persistent the enemy remains. Each new flare-up triggers urgent responses, ramping up the release of sterile males, intensifying monitoring, and trying to stop the spread before it crosses the barrier. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. You have to stay alert all the time. And here's the curious part. All of this costs a lot of money. Yet governments keep investing because they understand an uncomfortable truth. Stopping this effort, even briefly, could bring the parasite back with full force. A little-known detail is that this permanent vigilance has become a worldwide model for biological control. But as efficient as it is, it's not foolproof. And that's exactly where the next chapter of this story begins. The fight grows even more complex, and even more silent. The battle against the screwworm fly is one of those silent, invisible fights for most people. Yet it carries huge importance for animal health, the economy, and even food security. Despite all the victories accumulated, the enemy has never been fully defeated. It's like that curious myth that refuses to die. A mystery that challenges both science and human strategy. Halting this struggle is simply out of the question because just one slip-up could wipe out years of effort. And the fly, with its incredible ability to spread and reproduce, can come back in full force, causing terrible wounds and billions in damage once again. What makes this campaign one of the most successful in human history is exactly that ongoing vigilance, even when no one is watching. It's work that demands resources, technology, and, most importantly, constant political and social commitment. Behind the cold numbers and huge factories, there's a network of dedicated people who understand that the fight isn't just against an insect, but against an invisible enemy that can affect human lives and environmental balance. An interesting fact is that this kind of biological control has inspired other campaigns around the world, showing how science can be used to manage pests without harming the environment. But like any battle, the biggest challenge is staying focused for the long haul. The screwworm fly is a tireless adversary, and the fight has no end date. This ongoing battle might seem invisible, even a bit tiring, but it's essential to avoid facing a much bigger problem down the road. Human persistence, combined with advances in science and international cooperation, makes all the difference. And that's exactly the point that sparks curiosity and admiration. Even when facing a tiny enemy, the capacity for overcoming and innovation is enormous. And this story, far from over, continues unfolding behind the scenes, setting the stage for the next chapter, which promises to be just as fascinating as the ones before. So, had you ever heard about these radioactive flies saving the day? It's amazing to think that such a tiny enemy can be fought with such an unexpected solution, right? But do we really know all the secrets of this invisible battle? What other strategies might science be preparing to keep this parasite away? Do you think this technique could be used against other pests or problems around the world? If you want to keep uncovering these mysteries, curiosities, and historical facts that no one usually tells you, Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications button to be the first to know when we release new videos. Here, curiosity never stops. And of course, share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice makes all the difference in this conversation. After all, understanding these invisible battles helps us appreciate even more the science and effort that keep our world safe.